An inquiry hears that the Star Casino Group knew it was dealing with a member of a Chinese triad gang and did nothing for 3 months. Bond markets sell off as interest rate expectations rise, and that's not good news for our super funds. And more than 2 million Australians experienced fraud last year. It's Thursday, the 24th of March, 2022. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael. Now, I want to jump in. I'm really excited about the interview straight after the show. It's with a guy called Scott Rigby from Adobe. We always think of Adobe as PDF producers, but they do so much more. And what Adobe and a lot of small businesses are thinking about is how the digital customer experience works. Now, to me, Michael, that sounds like a lot of jargon. Scott put it into English. He actually explained when you start talking about digital customer experience and things like that, what it all means. It's a really interesting chat, Michael.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing that gets me is that you do think of Adobe as being PDFs and Adobe Acrobat Reader and everything that's been around for years, but they have so many other products and so many other software packages. And in the end, in terms of software, they're actually second only to, I think, Microsoft in terms of size.
In terms of size, I think that's right, yeah.
It is a fantastic chat, that one, and that comes up after the show, so stick around for that. But Sean, let's get into it because I want to talk about the Star, because every day we seem to be getting some incredible stories out of the inquiry into whether the Star Group is fit to hold a gaming license. More and more disturbing tales. Yesterday it was revealed the Casino Group knew it was dealing with an individual linked to triad groups.
Yes, absolutely incredible to hear that. The group's manager of due diligence and intelligence, Angus Buchanan, said he was aware that the Sun City Junket, now a junket is a group that organises trips for VIP customers to casinos around the world. Sun City is the name of that junket group. So Sun City Junket was linked to criminals, and one of its key investors was a triad gang member. Now, the person, Alvin Chow, who was CEO of Sun City, was allegedly involved in illegal bookmaking, drug trafficking, and large-scale money laundering activities. Mr. Buchanan had previously worked at the Hong Kong Jockey Club and sent the information to senior company executives at the Star, but nothing was done for at least 3 months, even though they knew about the claims. And in fact, the Star only moved to shut down the high roller room catering for Sun City clients when media reports emerged alleging the junket was linked to organised crime. Mr. Chan was arrested last November, so obviously it hasn't occurred since then. Sun City is the group that has an exclusive gaming room at Crown Melbourne as well. Back in May 2018, $5.6 million in cash was found in the cupboard of that room and left there. The Star had looked relatively clean compared to Crown, but I tell you what, this inquiry is suggesting otherwise.
Sean, I'm sorry, I actually started laughing halfway through that story just because it's actually hard to believe some of this stuff is coming out, and the inquiry is not over yet, so there could well be more to come.
It's like watching a movie and hearing all these stories that you don't think would happen in real life. And of course, there are allegations here, so we don't have proof, but there's a lot of allegations going on about what occurred. And of course, today's story is from someone who is actually head of due diligence and intelligence at the Star. So he should know what's going on, Angus Buchanan.
You'd think so. Sean, tell me, have all of these revelations, and as we say, there's been plenty of them, have they hurt the Star's share price?
Well, no, not really. In fact, it finished up more than 1% yesterday and has traded flat since the inquiry began. It was exactly the same at Crown when that inquiry hit. It wasn't until it was a few weeks before Crown's share price started to fall, and that's when people realised that maybe Crown won't be able to get a licence in New South Wales. Maybe Crown won't be able to keep its licences in Victoria and Western Australia. So far, Star's share price has held up, but who knows in the next few weeks.
All right, what about the rest of the local market yesterday? How did it travel?
It was a pretty good day, really, with the S&P ASX 200 finishing up 0.5% to 7,378 points. That's a new 20-day high. The top performer was Unity Group, after receiving another takeover bid. More of that shortly. The tech stocks did well, led by Xero, which jumped more than 4%. Block's share price, that's the owner of Afterpay, jumped another 7% today. All those shareholders that took Block stock when it bought Afterpay are pretty happy at the moment. The banks did well, led by National Australia Bank, which rose 1.6%. CSL was up more than 1%, while property giant Goodman jumped nearly 2%. On the downside, Fisher & Paykel lost almost 8% after warning of higher transport costs. Biotech Mesoblast was off nearly 6%. And BHP dropped nearly 1% after its big 5% rise on Tuesday. The overall market probably would have done better, except for the fact that BHP was down.
Sean, if we were to do a quick word association test, and if I was to say bond markets, the first word that springs to mind is probably not action. But much of the action is in bond markets at the moment.
It's very exciting in bond markets. There are a lot of people who are bond traders around the world. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people who at the moment, with interest rates rising, have so much to do all of a sudden. Now, stay with me on this. The Bloomberg Global Aggregate Index, which is a benchmark for government and corporate debt, i.e. bonds, has fallen 11% from its high 12 months ago. That's the biggest drop in at least 30 years. Remember, Michael, pretty much all of us have bonds in our super accounts, and so the value of those bonds, on average, are down 11% over the past 12 months. For the value of our super accounts, it's no different to an 11% loss in the value of equities. Having said all that, bonds are now yielding much more. So if you buy into the market today, you'll get a much better return than if you bought a few months ago. But there's such a big chunk of many people's super, and particularly as you get older, you tend to invest, or your super fund tends to invest in bonds which are less risky rather than equities and alternative investments. So this is really big news for your bottom line of your super fund. Anyway, I'll leave that alone. You don't want to hear any more about bonds, I'm sure. Michael, there's also plenty of pressure on oil prices after Russia pulled back capacity on a major pipeline that sends crude oil to global markets. The concern now is that Russia will stop selling oil to other countries, though it is a very important source of income for Moscow.
Hey, Sean, can I just jump in very quickly before you keep going? Because in the last day or so, we've received a question from a listener, BJP, via Twitter, who has quite simply asked, and I think this is probably a pretty good place to put it to you, can you explain why fuel hikes cause interest rate rises?
Good question from BJP, because at least directly they don't. Once the Reserve Bank looks at inflation and something they call underlying inflation to decide whether or not to move on interest rates. So inflation includes lots of volatile items like fuel prices. Underlying inflation doesn't include those volatile items, and that's actually what the Reserve Bank concentrates on. So it is a very good question. If fuel goes up, why do we end up with higher interest rates when the Reserve Bank isn't taking a lot of notice of it? The reason is because when oil prices and fuel prices rise, they flow through the economy and have second and third order effects. So someone like Kathmandu came out yesterday, KMD, and talked about higher prices. Now that's partly transport prices, which of course fuel feeds into. It's raw material costs, which of course fuel and energy feeds into. So while directly higher oil prices don't impact inflation, or at least the inflation that the Reserve Bank cares about, and therefore interest rates, indirectly it does. I think I've just been explained that in a very convoluted manner, but it's a very good question. And the bottom line is the flow-through effect on the economy pushes prices up, and when prices go up, interest rates go up.
Oh, hey, I think you did a pretty good job of that. And look, if there are any more questions, just kind of keep them coming via Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or fearandgreed.com.au.
Just don't make them too hard.
No, definitely not. Well, actually make them hard and let's see if we can trip you up. I like the sound of that. Please, sorry to interrupt you, Sean. Please go on.
No. I just wanted to finish off on Wall Street because it's actually done pretty well in recent sessions. Like yesterday, Tesla was up nearly 8%. That's its best day since January. Nike's done really well. So too travel-related companies like Wynn Resorts. And even some of the meme stocks, they're the ones that gain prominence among retail investors via social media. They've made a reappearance on the market. GameStop jumped more than 30% yesterday, for example.
All right. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, how about this for a statistic? 2.1 million Australians experienced some type of personal fraud last financial year, according to the Bureau of Stats. Amazingly high number.
Yes, and I wonder how many experienced fraud and didn't know about it. There's been a big jump in card fraud and scams, and the Bureau estimates that only about half of those who experienced a scam, as opposed to a card fraud, a scam, actually reported it. Fortunately, most of the card fraud and identity theft makes it to the attention of authorities. The estimate is about 90% does that. About 2/3 are buying or selling scams, and 23% are computer support scams. Very, very difficult challenge for the economy to come to grips with.
Sean, the federal coalition has promised to put $5.4 billion into the Hell's Gate Dam near Townsville should the project get approved. Look, politics aside, I think a prerequisite for a major infrastructure project like this, it should have a cool name like Hell's Gate. That's a fantastic name for a dam.
I was wondering where you were going there. I'm thinking, he's going to be very insightful here, but I don't think you were Hell's Gate.
Nope.
Pretty good. Righto. I mean, the thing about Hell's Gate is it actually relies on the Queensland government approving it, and that's actually a fair way away. So to offer $5.4 billion is great, but it still needs that project to get approved. Now, the federal coalition expects the project to open up to 60,000 hectares of irrigation if it is approved, create 7,000 jobs, and inject about $1.3 billion into the northern Queensland economy. Michael, what I did find incredible about yesterday's announcement, though, was it was the first time Prime Minister Scott Morrison and Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce had a joint public appearance since the Nationals leadership spill 9 months ago when Mr Joyce took over that job.
Really? The first one?
The first one. Obviously, they've been in Parliament together, but they haven't had a joint public appearance in 9 months.
Oh, there you go. And Sean, there was also some money announced for small businesses as well.
Yes, small businesses should get a $1.85 billion cash boost in the budget next week, with the coalition set to change pay-as-you-go tax instalments. It will also spend on technology to reduce red tape for small businesses.
Now, Sean, you mentioned this one earlier, but Macquarie Asset Management and Canadian pension fund PSP Investments have made a $3.6 billion bid for telecommunications group Unity.
Yes, this business is very popular at the moment. It's got more than one suitor. Morrison & Co. has already made a $4.50 a share bid for Unity. At $5, this one appears to trump it, but there are always conditions with these bids, and the board of Unity is yet to grant the new bidders access to the books. It's already done that for Morrison. Unity makes most of its money from building and managing broadband networks for housing estates. As news of the bid leaked, its share price jumped 11%.
Sean, one of the country's biggest oil and gas producers, Santos, said it's found a significant oil discovery off the coast of Western Australia.
It has. The Pavo 1 field is about 160 kilometres northeast of Port Hedland, and it's 70% owned by Santos and 30% by Carnarvon Energy, which is also listed on the ASX. Santos Chief Executive Kevin Gallagher said they were low-carbon oil and gas resources that have been discovered and would add to Australia's energy security. Now, it's the second largest oil find in the past 5 years. Santos' share price was unchanged yesterday, but Carnarvon Energy was up nearly 12%. There's still something romantic about these huge mineral discoveries. Now, I guess people don't want to discover too much more oil and gas, but still the idea of being 160 kilometres off the coast and somehow geologists realising that there's a resource under the ocean, I find that quite incredible.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's got the same kind of feel to it as the gold mining in Africa. And even when we've talked about the exploration of parts of Antarctica, not for resources, but just the exploration of it, it is kind of exciting to think that there is still stuff to be discovered here on Earth.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, Sean, another big jump in COVID cases across the country.
Sure was. In South Australia, cases were up by almost 25% to 4,600. Tasmania recorded nearly 2,000 cases. That's a huge number for that state. There were 1,300 cases in the ACT, 10,500 in Queensland. Victoria recorded 10,500 cases. That's up on recent numbers. And New South Wales was at 24,000 new infections.
Sean, a couple of quick smaller ones. Non-bank lender Plenty has lifted its cash profit forecast. We actually spoke to the boss, the co-founder and the CEO, Daniel Fogo of Plenty, just last week, which is a great chat. And if you haven't heard it, you can find it on the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or head to fearandgreed.com.au. But anyway, Sean, over to you.
He didn't tell us that he was about to lift his cash profit forecast, though, did he?
No, he certainly didn't. But there's a lot more background to it, and he talks a lot about where the business is making its money. So it's just an interesting chat anyway, and very, very interesting in the context of yesterday's announcement.
Yes, the forecast almost doubled for the 6 months ending this month. That helped its share price jump 14%. Just quickly, Michael, Kathmandu reported lower sales in the 6 months to the end of December, while Rip Curl sales were higher. Boss of KMD, which owns both, said he's concerned about inflationary pressures and prices will rise. And I have to throw this one in, Michael. Congratulations and thanks for the memories. Ash Barty, the world's #1 tennis player, who, of course, announced her retirement yesterday at the tender age of 25. Ash, you've done Australia proud. Good luck in the future.
Yeah, well said. Wasn't she a fantastic player to watch, and just someone that everyone could get behind without any kind of hesitation. A lot of the other kind of male tennis players, Nick Kyrgios and others, kind of really divide people, but every single person gets behind Ash Barty.
And she didn't play the power game. She just played a different brand of tennis, an old-style brand of tennis, and I think people loved it.
Yeah, absolutely right. All right, moving on to overseas news. Sean, what's the latest in the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
US President Joe Biden is pushing for more sanctions against Russia from European countries and will soon announce the next phase of military assistance. It comes as the European Central Bank says cryptocurrencies are being used by Russians to evade sanctions. The volume of rubles being converted into cryptos has hit its highest level in almost a year. On the ground, there's been fierce fighting in the southern city of Mariupol. According to reports, Russian forces are being held out, but the city has been decimated. Russian forces have also advanced into the suburbs of the capital, Kyiv.
Sean, one last quick one for you. We're used to companies like Adidas and Coca-Cola and Visa sponsoring the FIFA World Cup, but now Crypto.com has signed up.
Yes, it's a shift away from traditional sponsors for the sport of football. The World Cup is being played in November this year in Qatar rather than the normal June-July period. That's because of the weather. And it's the latest in a run of sporting events and teams that have gotten a crypto sponsor. World Cup sponsorships are worth tens of millions of dollars or more. Crypto.com is an exchange based in Singapore. It's already put money into F1, an Ultimate Fighting Championship. It's now going for the round ball game, and it's a whole stream of new revenue for these sports organisations. Really interesting to see it play out.
Yeah, certainly is. Plenty of money there. All right, up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview. We talked a fair bit about this at the start of the show, Sean. Scott Rigby from Adobe. Great chat.
Great chat. As I mentioned at the top, he put it all into English, and really useful if you're a business, small or large, thinking about using technology. Well worth a listen.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That is up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform, or head to fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 24th of March, 2022. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. And don't forget your smart speakers. Just say, play the Fear and Greed podcast, and away you go. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.